let me take a minute to talk to you about something very unique that I think you would really enjoy, particularly if you have an interest in wine. The Cuneo family founded a very unique company about 6 years ago, and it's a wine company. And the name of the company is Blendtique, and that's spelled Blendtique, Blendtique. One of the things I've learned in enjoying wine over the years is that the best red wines in the world are actually blends of more than one grape. So we created a company that makes what we call a wine blending kit. And in the kit, we have 4 different varietals of red wine. We have Cabernet Sauvignon, we have Merlot, Shiraz, and Grenache. And these are all in half bottles. And also in the kit, you get a flask, a pipette, and instructions for how to come up with your own red wine blend. Our wines are actually very high quality wines. We source all the wines from the best producers of wine in the Central Coast of California. We love the idea that we can bring something special to wine lovers around the world. So please check out the company online. The company again is Blendtique, Blendtique, or you can go to our website, petercuneo.com, and then you'll find a link there directly to Blendtique. And by the way, please stick around till the end of today's episode. Blendtique's CEO, Billy Dim, will be on with a special offer for all you wine lovers. Thanks very much.
Welcome to Superhero Leadership, the podcast that explores outstanding leadership through the lens of some of the most successful superhero leaders in business, sports, politics, the military, and public service. This podcast is for anyone who aspires to great leadership. Our host, Peter Cuneo, has experienced superhero leadership throughout his life and career, from serving as a naval officer in the Vietnam War to being the CEO of Marvel Entertainment. Peter has completed 7 business turnarounds in consumer products, media, and in entertainment, and served on the boards of many public and private enterprises, often as chairman. Drawing from his list of what he considers 32 essential qualities and characteristics for great leaders, Peter offers actionable takeaways you can implement into your own life and career today. Here's Peter to introduce his guest.
Today, I'm thrilled to introduce a very good friend who truly embodies and practices the 32 essentials of superhero leadership. She knows what it means for a leader in today's ever-changing media landscape. She's a dynamite journalist, a producer, and a philanthropist. She has been at the forefront of storytelling and social justice for more than 2 decades. She is perhaps best known as an anchor for CNN Morning Show and CNN's Starting Point. She has a weekly talk show called Matter of Fact, which is on the Hearst TV network. She appears on HBO's Real Sports with Brian Gumbel as well. Her honors include multiple Peabody Awards, multiple Emmy Awards, and a TV Academy Award. Her series on Latinos in America and her series on Blacks in America, I believe, truly changed the way TV reporting is done. Today, she is the founder and driving force for her Starfish Media Group. She pushes stories that matter, stories that ignite inspiration and conversation. If that weren't enough, she is also the founder of Powerful Foundation, aimed at empowering young women to achieve their full potential. Please welcome my dear friend, Soledad O'Brien.
Hi, Peter. Thanks for having me.
It's great to see you, Soledad.
Great
It's
to see you.
been a while. Always a pleasure.
Likewise.
I've noticed in studying great leaders historically, as well as some currently, that they all had some very interesting experiences, lifestyles, whatever, when they were young. And you might think about and possibly comment about some things in your early life that were unique, as I know, that helped form the Soledad O'Brien of today, the leader of today.
I think probably the main thing was that I was number 5 of 6. And so I was always very frustrated as a kid by not leading. We had a group, the top three, the earlier three in birth order were the big E's and we were the little E's. And it was extremely frustrating to be grouped with the littler group and never be allowed to do anything. My parents were both immigrants to the country. My dad was from Australia. My mom was from Cuba. She was Afro-Cuban. And they had met in the United States at Johns Hopkins University. And so by the time I was born, they had moved to Long Island. My dad was one of the founding professors at SUNY Stony Brook. And I think a lot of what helped me as I think about both my journey to becoming a leader and also the things that I think about when I think about leadership was really just having parents who very much valued family. I mean, it sounds almost hokey, I know, in this day and age, but like we sat down to dinner every night. My parents would start asking everybody, like, what did you do? What did you learn? And you were very much encouraged to have grown-up conversations and debate and argue. We were 6 kids, but born in 7 years. So we were very close in age. So we were constantly having debates about what movie was escapist. And because it was escapist, we shouldn't be watching it. Or we had a TV constitution because all 6 of us couldn't agree on what TV shows to watch. 5 of us loved Star Trek, and I had a sister who hated Star Trek. And there was this big debate around, so should the rights of the minority, that one person who hates Star Trek, be trampled by the rights of the majority, the 5 people who do love Star Trek? It was so ridiculous. But it was actually a lot of the way I learned about how you deal with people and manage people and how you leverage relationships to help you. We all would be very close as I went through life, whether it was college or early in my work career or even having kids. I really relied on my sisters. Oh my God, what's happening? Can you help me and give me advice? And I think they were very supportive. I think we have a very supportive family. And all those things, I think, bolster you as a leader because you can bounce ideas off of people as well. And then the other thing I would say is that my dad was a very gentle person. Like he was just a great guy, and he definitely wasn't loud. The kind of people who I think often stick out as leaders, they're loud, they're in the front, they're leading the way. And my dad was not that guy. He was so quiet and he was so smart and he was interesting. There were things I learned about him at his funeral because he just didn't talk about things. And I always admired that humility. He was just a humble man. And I think that actually was a really great thing to think about. How are you a leader, but also a leader who's not necessarily loud, but a leader who leads with humility and helping the whole team move forward?
I know that your parents fell in love, wanted to get married, and they had to cope with some challenges.
Yeah.
Because this was a biracial marriage.
Yeah, in 1958.
Yeah, and they couldn't.
Bad time for that.
You couldn't get married in every state if it was biracial. And how do you think, though, that challenge, overcoming that kind of challenge affected you?
I think we all knew as kids that my parents, one, would just do whatever they wanted to. They were living in Baltimore, Maryland, which, of course, interracial marriage was illegal in the state of Maryland. And they ended up driving to Washington, D.C. and getting hitched and then driving back to Maryland and living illegally. And my parents, if you met them, you'd say, oh, they're so sweet, they're so quiet. But they actually were just going to do what they wanted to do. And whenever somebody would tell them something that they didn't want to listen to, people used to say to them, whatever, you don't have kids. Biracial kids won't make it in the world. My mother was always lovely, like, like she was not confrontational, but she literally would ignore everybody. And there was something that was, I think, really great about that. Like you can carve your own path and not necessarily announce every step that you're taking. My parents were such, in a lot of ways, just living their lives like activists. It was one of the most activist-y things you could do. But you wouldn't know that if you met them. They were very calm and quiet and sweet. And I think it gave me another version of how you can do that. That's not the one you often see with like the placard on a pole yelling and screaming. They just did what they wanted to do when they wanted to buy their house in Long Island. And no one would sell a house to them. They just maneuvered around. And my dad ended up by himself finding some property and getting someone to sell the property to him. They were never really stopped by, yeah, this is just not going to be possible for you. And that would continue through my childhood. And I think you learn from that the idea of it's just not the final word. There's a lot that you can personally make happen, even if everything around you is saying, oh, no.
Something must have been going right because all 6 of you graduated from Harvard College.
Yeah, I know. You would think that we'd have a library somewhere. Why didn't anybody give like $10 million? That would have helped us. I think everybody got out of school what they needed to. And I think the only thing that we didn't really realize as we went into college was how much of success is about networking, meeting people. Growing up in Long Island, it just wasn't like that. But once you get to college, it's really about, sure, your grades and sure, your classes and sure, your major, obviously, do well. But who are you meeting? What experiences are you having? And are you leveraging relationships so you can get summer internships, so you can get jobs, so you can get recommendations, so you can just get advice? I think that was something that we really all learned at Harvard, whether we were there undergrad or at grad school.
I'm often asked when we look at our 32 essentials of superhero leadership, what's the most, I feel is the most difficult one on the whole list.
What do you think is?
It's actually number 18, and I'm going to read it to you because I think you have embraced this, and this is the hardest one of all of them to get right.
Look at me, embracing the hardest one.
I've always admired this in you, but it reads as follows. Embrace true emotional maturity. The realization and an internalization that you can't make everyone happy. You can't accomplish leadership goals fearing others' opinions. And you're known certainly for attacking, if you will, difficult subjects that other people won't. You're outspoken when you feel you should be, and you're not afraid of what the blowback might be. This is all, frankly, one of many things that makes you very effective in my mind.
Oh, thank you.
Where did that come from?
I think it really started doing documentaries because you pour so much into a documentary. And I really got to the point where if someone was critical, I didn't mind if they hated the documentary because there was something wrong with it. Hey, you got that fact wrong. That's just not wrong, or that was badly done. But sometimes people would just be mad about a story or something. And I would say, no, I am very proud of the work I do. I will apologize if I've messed something up, but I'm going to stand up for the work I do around often. It's, why did you do this? Why do you say this? This is controversial. I remember we did Black in America, which was this big doc for CNN. And I remember having this very awkward conversation because the second year we were doing a story, and it was, the first season was 6 hours. Second season was 1 hour. And in 1 hour on TV, it's 6 chunks before you hit your end of your hour, 44 minutes, 30 seconds. And I remember we had 5 Black people and 1 white woman. And I was like, we get 6 people for the whole entire documentary we're doing called Black in America. This white lady is a very nice person. She was running a program for kids whose dads were in prison. She was lovely. She was wonderful. But she can't be in my doc. And it was so awkward. And I literally felt like I was standing out there alone, and people were so mad at me. And I'm just like, here's what you're saying. You're saying we couldn't find 6 Black people. So we have 5 Black people and this really great white lady who was great. And so every so often, or pretty often actually in docs, you have to just stand up and say, this is not okay. We can't do it this way, because it's your face, it's your reputation. And sometimes when you do a doc, people think you wrote it, you edited it, you shot it, that I did all of it. And so I always felt very responsible. And I think when you take on responsibility, that kind of gives you the courage to say, if I'm going to be responsible, then it has to be accurate, it has to be right, it has to be good, it has to be fair. It has to be high quality. And then I think you're fine to say, and I'm going to stand up and do that. And if it's not popular, and guess what? We found another Black person and put them in my documentary. I don't think people really thought about the impact. It was just easy. And I just wasn't going to go for easy. It doesn't sometimes make you friends.
Let's talk about that, because my professional career, as I think you know, has been doing turnarounds, if you will, of very distressed companies. Most people know me as the CEO of Marvel Entertainment. Marvel had just come out of bankruptcy when I became the CEO. I didn't know a thing about making movies or comic books at all. But it was very clear that we had to do things very differently than movie makers generally did or comic book producers did. So in putting those changes and encouraging those changes to become part of the culture, the fabric of the value system of Marvel.
What was the hardest one to do? Look at me turning the tables. But really, I find that gig so interesting. And I've known, obviously, that this is what you did. But you've got 10 really challenging, hard choices.
Yeah.
And a whole entire group of people who are freaked out, right? Because they know it's in distress. They have mortgages. Should they quit? The great ones probably have had other opportunities, so they've bailed. You're now dealing with all these people who are not the most calm or stable. They're all freaking out on you. And you have to go in and say, here's some tough words. What was the hardest one and how'd you do it?
I honestly can't pick a hardest one. There were so many. But basically at Marvel, the reason that Marvel was so successful was people usually think when they ask me that question, yeah, I'm going to say we made great movies or we made great content, which we did, by the way. But actually it was the culture, the value system. And the value system was we're going to change the rules of the game. We're going to do things completely differently. And when it came to making movies, we didn't cast big stars to start because we thought, for example, that the characters were the stars and they were behind masks anyway. What we wanted was great actors and actresses to play the roles. And the rep community in Hollywood did not like me at all. And I had a number of discussions with rep firms, literally, shouting matches.
Yeah.
I wasn't shouting, by the way, where they wanted us to cast big names and so on that would, quote, make the films. Right. And we never had to. We never did that. And that also meant that we made the films for a lot less
And
cost.
now the big names are begging to be in a Marvel film.
Well, it's many years later now. And of course, it's Disney, and Disney can afford to pay big name people and so on and so forth. But we really did approach so many things differently.
Right. When you go in and you blow up a system that everybody has been like, this is the system, this is how we do it. It's really hard. And even when it's damaging and you're like, no, we are damaged. We're not winning on this. We have to change the rules. Sometimes it's very hard for people to get along with it.
Most human beings don't like change. It's not common.
I had a boss who used to say, there's opportunity in change. And I have used that so many times. I even say it to the kids, like, there's opportunity in change. And it was so helpful to reframe, right? Because it does feel like chaos is all around you. Everything is terrible. Who knows what's going to happen? And just thinking, yeah, but imagine if we thought about it as opportunity. Where's the opportunity?
I think to be successful, you have to be constantly innovating, making changes. You just can't, in today's world where competition changes so rapidly, where technology changes so rapidly, you have to be on top of your game just about every day. Right. When I first started many years ago in business, we could write, in some of the businesses I was involved in, a long-range plan and wait a whole year to update it. Today, there is no long-range plan. Right. There really isn't, because things are changing so rapidly. Right. You have to be ready to cope with that. And most people don't like change, even good change. I've had people I've offered very nice promotions to who would turn it down. Didn't want the responsibility.
Interesting.
They had their cubicle and their, if you will, and they're very happy with themselves and they were liked by everybody. The biggest thing with change and really effective leaders is just what we were talking about. You're going to make some people very unhappy, and there are still people, I'm sure, who even many decades later are saying, that guy Cuneo, not good.
Remember it.
Yeah, they still do. But it is. But if you're going to make change, particularly radical change, and I had to always make radical change because these were turnarounds, you just have to be comfortable with that. Not fun, but you have to be comfortable with doing that. And most people aren't.
I wonder how much more challenging is it for women? Because I do think women have the idea of likability, right? The idea of, I'm sure as you walk down the street, you don't have people yell out, hey, baby, smile a little, baby. Because when I walk down the street, I might be on my phone. And no, because people have this sense that they can just tell you, be pleasant, look pleasant, be likable. Oh, for God's sakes, if you were just more likable, this would be so much easier. And I don't think, thinking of Brad, my husband, I don't think anybody tells him, be more likable. He's a nice guy. He's a likable guy. But I don't think people tell him that as a strategy for navigating the workplace, where I think women get that message all the time. And it's hard to be, I find, a leader if your first priority is, I really need everybody to like me. The people above me, the people below me, it's just not going to work.
I like to think it's changing, but we still have a long way to go, I think. I was very blessed. Talk about growing up. My mother was a saint. She was a working mother. She was an EMT for 30 years.
Wow.
The last 10 years, when she was physically disabled, she was basically the operator telling people where to go and so on, and which ambulances to go where. But I grew up with an image of working mother. And she loved to work and she loved to give back to people. That was her thing. And so when I actually came out in the workplace, I never had any problem with working women, but a lot of men did. A lot of men did. And it's too bad in a way. But again, I'm a big believer in diversity. And we're really starting to talk about diversity now. I just think that I'm going to read you another one of the 32 essentials, number 5. Try to avoid all prejudices. And of course, there were prejudices against women back then. Try to avoid all prejudices regarding leadership styles. There is strength in diversity. And my mother, going back to diversity, had a menagerie of friends, all types, all colors, all religions, all sexual orientations, all ethnic backgrounds. She just loved everyone. And she told us, forget it. We never heard a negative about anybody because of their background. We only heard they're good people and bad people in the world. You got to figure out who's who. So I grew up, didn't even know there was a problem with diversity when I was young. And now today, I think successful leaders welcome diversity. They're looking for multiple backgrounds, multiple opinions, multiple takes on the same situation.
But I think the really successful ones come up with a strategy of how to get there, because I have met so many leaders and I do a lot of work around issues of race and everything. So I end up talking to a lot of people about diversity. And what ends up happening is you get a lot of, I'm a good guy. Listen, my daughter's boyfriend is Muslim and we love that kid. And the nicest, like they're not being jerks. The question is, but when you're interviewing people, how do you work around the idea that everyone has bias? What is the strategy? And it can't be, I look at deep into their heart and I see if they're a good person. That's just not a strategy. And I think there's been so much more information about how to work around your own or your individuals within your companies, just inherent bias. We were, for the show I do now, we did a listening tour, really talking to people in various parts of the country after the murder of George Floyd. And every so often I would look up and see our entire staff was white. And I'm like, literally everyone we're talking to, we're talking to Native American tribes. We're talking to an Asian band that went to the Supreme Court to name their band the Slants, and then nobody liked it. So we're having all these really intense conversations about diversity, and yet among ourselves. And I can promise you, all the people on that show are the nicest, kindest, loveliest, good-hearted people. But then you had to say, actually, this show is going to be representative, and it was actual work, like hard work. You then had to make sure you had a roster of diverse people and you had to hold yourself accountable. And it couldn't be, I'm a good person. It had to be, how many people are we bringing in? How many people are we interviewing? Who's actually booking them? Is this team diverse? When our show moved into a new studio, we now have diverse cameramen. We have women who are doing at every level, because there was an iteration that was, sure, there's diversity, but it's all the entry-level people, which often happens in companies, right? It's like, sure, we have diversity. See all those, that's our new incoming class of interns. And you're like, yeah, they're diverse, but where is it in the upper ranks? And it's so much work. I know, because we have done it. And there's no person who's saying, no, I don't believe in this. I'm standing in the way. We still all stand in the way because we just do how we do them. So to break out of those habits is really hard. And I do think it takes a leader who says, you are a great person. So then what's our strategy to change these numbers? And I'm going to be open to measuring how we're doing, because if we're not measuring it, then we really don't care about it, right? We're obviously not, anything you measure, you clearly want an answer. And if you're not getting on the scale in the morning, it's because you don't want to know. So I think I've seen some real growth in leadership when it comes to diversity, because leaders have begun to recognize they're going to be held accountable for that.
So you just raised a very interesting issue, which is, in a way, retraining people's minds so that they don't think about diversity. They just accept whoever's the most qualified or who needs to be in that position.
Or they recognize where they're flawed. I am bad at interviewing people. I can interview people. I love interviewing people about their potential. I look at someone and I'm like, wow, they could be great. My husband, when he interviews people, looks at them at this moment in time, can they do this job? And I think you actually need a handful of different people who say, I look at them to see, are they going to be a good fit for the culture? The other person says, do they have a runway here? Is there going to be I'm that person, I'm the runway person. Oh, they are going to grow into something amazing. You need the person who says, right, but we're hiring them for this. Can they do this job? And so what I found was, instead of me doing interviews and then being baffled that it wasn't working out, I work around my own flaws. I work around my own bias. And I bring other people in who make up for my bias. So when someone says they are amazing, but did they tell you actually in 8 months they want to go to graduate school? I didn't talk about that. It was really interesting to see, even if you have a very positive type of bias, which I think looking at someone's potential is a nice sort of bias, but it's still a bias that doesn't help your organization. Very easily solved. Just get other people to be part of the team and recognizing I am not doing this to the level that I should do it. I just need more people. Not I'm a genius and I'm a good person and I can't be making mistakes. I am a good person, but also I need other people to help me do a good job hiring.
Of course.
And I think good leaders figure out how to actually see their own bias and say, okay, then let's work around. I love people who want to talk about golf. So I need to make sure that I have that great golf conversation. And then I bring another person in who talks to them about something else so we can really see who this human being is, and they run through that gamut. And after 5 interviews, we know who they are, and we know if they're the right person.
We talked about the challenges for women in the world today in terms of working women in particular. And we could be talking about business, profit, nonprofit. We could be talking about politics. We could be talking about religion. We could talk about lots of areas that women are rising up in. But I'm wondering, what advice would you give to young women of color or not, in terms of how to get out there, how to get in the mix.
Yes.
And what kind of attitudes make for success?
I'll tell you a story. So when I started working at WBC TV, I was a PA and then I got promoted. And by the time I was like an associate producer on this local show, I was working on the show that would come on before the Today Show. And so the Today Show would come on, I would finish that show, put my stuff down, run to the bathroom, and come into the morning meeting. And every day, of course, I was late because the morning meeting started exactly when the other show would start. So I'd always be 5 minutes late. And there was a guy who I should name because he's a terrible person, but I won't because I'm a good person. But this guy used to say, when I would come into the meeting, it probably was like 12 people. He'd say, oh, look at Soledad running on colored people's time. And I was like, what? And every day he had this like little snide comment. All the time, every time. And I was late every day. I would always be late because I didn't finish until the show began. I was going to be late. And I would go back to my little apartment on Marlborough Street and I would come up with like, when he says this, I'm going to say this. And when he does that, I'm going to do this. And I would come up with sassy comebacks. And oh my God, I put so much energy into this guy who, by the way, I've never seen him again since that job in 1980s. 1990 maybe? Like literally, TV is a small group of people. Never seen him again. And I tell this story a lot to women because I'm like, don't waste your time. Don't waste your time. I spent so much time with witty comebacks and being mad. And oh my God, if I had put that energy into my career where I could have been pitching stories and learning how to write faster. And so I often tell people like those little microaggressions are annoying as anything, but also you have to really think about your response. And that's not to say if someone's really being harassed in some capacity, they shouldn't go straight to HR and report it. But I mean those little annoying, stabby things that people just do. And I really look back and wish that I just had not cared as much. This person, I've never seen him again. I've never heard from him. What a waste of my time. And I often will tell just women, like, don't waste your time and your energy. Put that energy into something else because you're going to find people who are going to mock you for whatever. They're going to give you a hard time about this. They're going to be that one person who just rides you all the time. Let it go. Move on. Just move past them and watch the thing you're trying to get to. Because it is quite easy to be diverted off your goal while you're coming up with little sassy comebacks for stupidity. And it's really important to not do that. And I've always thought that was good advice, especially for women, really probably for anybody. But I think it's easy to get sucked into this thing that's really annoying you. And it can ruin how much you like a job, even something that's going well, because there's that person. So again, I look back and that was something I wish I'd done better. And I think that's been good advice for young people pretty much everywhere.
Another thing, when I think about you, it sort of relates to what we're talking about, is throughout your career, you've had to navigate challenges such as network changes, shifts.
I had 5 news presidents when I was at CNN. I was there for 10 years. I had 5 bosses. It's a lot.
Yes, it is in any business. Shifts in the media landscape as well, and so on. And you've obviously had resilience. You've come back from, I don't want to necessarily describe them as setbacks, but certainly change. Change that wasn't wonderful. And that's another thing I see in leaders. They tend to be very resilient. They don't roll up their tent when something goes wrong. And they may be down for a while, but they always seem to come back to the surface.
Yeah.
What is it about you? Because you strike me as someone who's exactly like that.
Yeah, I'm a very resilient person, although I will sit in my bed with a quart of Ben & Jerry's and think about rolling up my tent, cry like a baby. Being resilient is actually a really good skill for a reporter because stories just change all the time. And you're a better reporter if you're just very good at what you thought was going to happen is now plan B. Oh, no, actually, it's going to be plan C. Oh, gosh, no, it's going to be plan D. No, wait a minute, we're back to A. And you just get good. And I think good reporters just get good at going in with, here's a plan, but we might not stick to the plan. And we might have to really turn things around very quickly to make a deadline. That was one thing. I was just good at that. I also am nauseatingly optimistic, so that as annoyed and as bad as something can be, I definitely, within about 5 minutes, I'm like, and again, I'm a crier, so I will cry, and I'm an ice cream eater, so I will be miserable. But within about 5 minutes, I'm like, so what about this other opportunity? I think this might be it. I can't help myself. I just naturally sort of go into what's the next thing? But my mom used to say an interesting thing. She used to say, everybody gets the same 24 hours. My parents were very good at this idea of like, this is yours to manage the way you're going to manage it. It's your responsibility. Your success is, your failure is, but you have 24 hours. How do you want to spend it? And the other thing she said was, which was such a good rule, you get 24 hours to be upset. And then hour 25, you need to start making your list. You got to stop crying and get it together. So you had a day where you could, and it could be anything. I mean, she told me that, oh my gosh, I was breaking up with this terrible boy when I was in college. And I went down to Florida to visit. She was in Florida with my dad. And I would just sit in the hotel room and be like, oh my God, I'm so sad. It's terrible. And then at hour 25, she's okay, enough. You get 24 hours to wallow. Now, let's make a list. Let's do a pro and con. Let's do what are next steps. Let's talk about what's coming down the pike. And I think really being able to say, yeah, that was terrible. I felt it. I was in it. But now it's a new day. We turn the page and we start making a list. And I actually think being a list maker is very helpful. I'm a big list maker.
Do we know any good leaders who aren't optimists? I think optimism is the key part. And in my case, my mother was a super optimist, and she had a lot of challenges in life, and she just stood up to them and kept coming back. And she would tell me almost every day growing up, you can be whatever you want. You're this, you're that, even though I knew in my heart I couldn't be anything I wanted. We all have our strengths and our weaknesses. But it's still, it got to me.
Someone was telling me a story yesterday about a concert they went to, and the person who was performing at the end of the concert everybody loved it. It was magical. And the person was like, ugh, and could point out the one thing that had happened in the flute section. And he was just like, he just couldn't see the joy and the happiness and I'm not a Pollyanna person. I think if something's terrible, you can say it's terrible, but some people just can't eke the happiness and beauty out of something. And then other people walk through the world saying, oh my God, I'm so lucky to be here. I'm so lucky to have been invited to this. I'm so lucky that I get to experience this. And I've always really loved those people.
Optimism also, I think, is very important as a leader. And actually, number 14 on our list of 32 says, be a cheerleader, allow others to dream.
Oh, yeah.
And I've always, going into turnarounds when everyone is worried, nervous, they may lose their job, who knows what's going to happen. I always made it a point to have constant communication with people in the company. And I would often have pizza lunches where we would have a group of maybe 10 or 12 people who were from all different levels in the company. And I would talk about what our plans were for the company. We'd celebrate successes when we had
so
them.
much happens in companies that happens in people's minds that are not actually happening, right? Somebody says, did you see Peter walk by me? And when he turned away, oh my gosh, I'm probably getting fired. And meanwhile, you're just busy. And you realize it's so easy when people don't have that constant communication, when they don't feel like you're necessarily on their team, they make up in their head to fill that space.
Well, I have a story on this, and it just goes to show. And actually, the number one essential is generate positive energy from minute one. So I'm typically walking into a new situation, a new office. I'm the new CEO or president, whatever the title was. And basically, I have to be looking up all the time. I just have to. People are watching you. They're watching your body language, to your point. And in one particular situation, I'd been on the new job about a month. And I would come in every day and walk through the reception's area to my office, and the receptionist, we'll call her Irma, for want of a better name.
That's the one you come up with, and we're making a fake name, Irma? Okay.
And Irma was about 70 years old. She was a gray-haired lady, and she'd been with the company for 30 years.
Wow.
Something like that, and she knew everybody. And this is a multinational company, so she knew even some of the people overseas. And one day I had a little tiff with my wife, and obviously my fault, but
clearly, because I know your wife and she's perfection. Yeah. So yes, your fault.
Definitely my fault. But I was just thinking about, I don't even remember anymore what the issue was, but it didn't matter. I was in thought, and I walked by her, and normally every morning I would say, "Good morning, Irma, great day." I didn't acknowledge her. And an hour later, the head of HR came to my office and said, "We're having rumors there are going to be layoffs."
See?
Okay? And this is exactly what you're talking about. And I learned that sometimes I have to fake it because we're all human and good things happen. Sometimes bad things happen, and you have to be an actor as a leader sometimes.
Right.
Particularly in turnarounds where there's constant bad news, at least initially, when you first start.
Yeah.
I think that's very important. It's something people don't really think about very much.
And you're also under a ton of pressure yourself. So you think about all that's happening to you. It is hard to be outside of yourself and remember you ignore this person you're yelling at, so you're just in a bad mood, or you're forgetful and you forget to do something and you realize, wow, that's going to be interpreted not as, wow, she's so busy. The other day, 2 weeks ago, I was in New York to San Francisco. The next day, I had to go San Francisco back to New York. Then I had to go back to San Francisco. And then I went back to New York 4 days, 4 trips. And I was wiped. And people were like, what's happening? You're so mad. I'm like, I'm just dying of exhaustion. I am not mad. I literally can barely stand. But the interpretation was so different than the actual fact of what was happening. But you realize they don't know. And so they're going to fill it with something.
I wanted to talk about your foundation.
Sure.
And it's called the Powerful, but I want to actually spell it for the listeners because it's
Power.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love it. It's a great foundation.
You're basically empowering young women to reach their full potential, or at least get ready to reach their full potential. Can you talk more about that?
Sure.
When did you start it and why?
Right after Katrina, we started it because I would meet all these mostly women, and I knew that I wanted to work with young women, but I'd meet all these remarkable young women who were just stuck in some cases. They were in New Orleans, and it was post-Katrina, and there was just no money at all to go anywhere. And I remember meeting this one young woman who met me at a parking lot of a McDonald's, because McDonald's was one of the main employers at the time, right after Katrina. And she showed me her transcript. She was a great student, and she needed something like $6,000 to go to Spelman. And I just remember thinking, all those things you described, like optimistic, hopeful, positive. And I'm like, why are you positive? First of all, you just lost everything in Hurricane Katrina. It's a mess. And here you are with the idea of like, basically, I just need someone to give me $6,000 so I can go to Spelman. And I was like, okay, I think I have a couple of friends I could ask, and I think we could raise $6,000. And we did it that way. We just started finding good people, and they didn't have to be on the Harvard track. They just had to be young women who were really willing to work hard to overcome some of the obstacles that had been thrown in their paths. And that particular young one went off to Spelman. I did her commencement. She got a job in marketing. She's wildly successful. She got married. She had her marriage in New Orleans, and then her husband's Indian, so they went to India to do their weddings. It's so much fun to watch these young people just blossom. But a lot of what our girls, I always call them girls because many of them are getting into high school level, a lot of times what they're really missing is social capital. They just don't have anyone to ask for money, anyone to ask for real advice, anyone to say, I'm trying to do X. Do you know someone? And I knew we would be able to provide money so they could go to college and support so they could get through college. So if you want to do such and such, here's how you have to think about it. You should talk to what I do with my own kids, right? Oh, you should talk to Billy Bob. He runs that company. I'm sure he'd be happy to have a coffee with you. You should go sit over here. You should attend this class. You should go to this lecture. Yeah. They just didn't have any of that. We had a young woman, one of our scholars, came to visit me in West Palm Beach, where we go in the winter, and she was in a really rough place, really depressed, and was working actually in TV news as a camera person, and her salary was about $20,000 a year, which, by the way, was significantly less than I had paid for her to go to college. And she had quit, and her friends were all calling me, oh my God, I'm freaking out. It's a mess. And I said to her, everybody's upset that you quit, but I'm proud of you for quitting. That's a terrible job. It doesn't pay enough money. And you're a college grad. We put a lot of money into your degree. So yeah, that's a good, and I think just that alone was surprising. So I helped her look at jobs, and we helped her kind of just figure out what she wanted to do, what she was good, kind of just like a parent would do. Eventually, she applied for a job in HR and got that job, a good job, making just under $80,000 a year. She moved to New York. She crashed in my apartment for a little bit till she could get her own apartment. Her very first day of work, it was HR at a bank, investment bank. Her first day, I'd given her all my old Anchor clothes. I had some nice stuff too, and she's super cute. So the first day of work, she comes out, and she's wearing a black jacket, a black top, and these fabulous python leather pants, fake python leather pants that I had given. I'm like, oh my God, you look amazing. Change. I mean, like, what? You can't wear python leather pants to the investment bank. What? But you realize who would tell her? She had no idea. And she looked amazing. It's just not appropriate. And was such a good example of, for so many of our young women, they just don't have anyone who says, so you go in and this is how you shake a hand and this is how you sit. And no, don't eat like that. And make sure the number of times we've had receptions that I would bring some of my scholars to, they're all in college, so they were of drinking age. And I would just walk around plucking wine glass. Oh, this reception is not for you. No, you're networking. Get rid of that glass of wine. I can drink a glass of wine. You know why? Because I'm not looking for a job. You are old enough to drink, but you cannot have a glass of wine because that is not, just no one has given them the advice. And so a lot of what we do in our foundation is just help people figure it out. This kind of stuff I feel like I got from my sisters, from my parents, who would walk you through stuff.
I do think that one of the biggest challenges we have right now, it is very difficult for young people to learn leadership. And I'll explain. I've been giving speeches around the globe for 20 years on leadership. And it's very clear to me that the world is really lacking, maybe in the worst in human history in terms of quality leadership. We're really lacking. Just turn on the news and you know what.
Here's what's being celebrated. Be a villain. Be over the top, have a TikTok, dance in front of some giant important piece of art or architectural site or something. But like, we don't celebrate like we used to. When I was younger, leaders were celebrated, and being able to be a person who could navigate something tricky and get through it was celebrated. Like, oh, that guy, he was the one. I remember when Mitt Romney was working on the LA Olympics, right? And this man is a master at pulling all these disparate people who have different agendas together. But now we celebrate people who stand up, who say crazy things, who are over the top, who are in a lot of ways the villain. And we give them a lot of airtime, and we call them, wow, they're bold and they're brave. And so it's just not celebrated.
There's reasons for this, I think. I honestly, in a way, it's very simple. In terms of young people learning leadership, it all has to do with as many face-to-face interactions you can have with a diversity of other people, diversity in geography as well, personal, professional, whatever. We don't have that much anymore, all right? We have phones, we have the internet, This is very impersonal. People will say things they'd never say to your face.
Right.
And so the extremes get all the, if you will, the attention. Kids aren't getting that kind of experience. And it's very difficult. It's very simple in a way. You have to learn your strengths and your weaknesses. On your weaknesses, there's two logical choices that you can make depending on the situation. One is avoid. The other is work to get better. But young people today, they just don't have much in the way of setbacks. They don't have failures because their parents won't let them fail.
But also, if you have a setback, if you have a failure, just know, different from when you and I were growing up, it's going to be on Instagram. People will be able to go, it's very hard to have any kind of major failure. If there were Instagram when I was first learning how to report, it would have been horrific because I was bad. And I got a nice long runway of a bunch of embarrassing and stupid mistakes and awkward things that I did, right? But no one was really there. Brad used to say to me, my husband used to say, well, not your best. This one wasn't your best. But nobody was going to say, OMG, did you see this? And suddenly it has 1 million views of people mocking me for whatever. So it is a different environment where I think it's harder to take a risky path. It's harder to fail.
I think it's very important.
I always liked failing. I really did think if you could help your kid learn through a terrible, my sons would have every so often an awful lacrosse season. And you just watch them not getting to play or watch a coach who is just not being nice to them and that they really didn't deserve. And they learned how to control themselves. I really did like the idea of they've now been through something that's a huge bummer and they've seen how you come out the other side. And it sucked in every way. And as a parent, it really sucked. And I don't think they would have gotten the same lesson if it hadn't been a miserable experience that they had to get through.
I think that's what I mean by we remember every terrible detail of our failures. And in my case, I only remember my successes, I like to say, from 40,000 feet. I really don't remember the details at all. But those failures, oh my goodness. Believe it or not, I know it's hard for you to believe, but I have had failures.
What? No. Get out. I don't believe it.
When I talk to other leaders, other CEOs, and so on, talk about the problems with young people today that they're hiring, they often mention a couple of things that's very sad. The first is work ethic. It's not that they have a poor work ethic. They have no work ethic. Don't show up. Don't quit. Don't call in. Don't show up in the future. These are not bad people. This is just a lack of exposure growing up to these kinds of things. They're also very thin-skinned because they haven't experienced much, or in some parents' cases, any failure. And when the first thing hits, they cannot handle it emotionally. And it's unfortunate because they're going to have a lot of problems in life because we all have our problems, our challenges, and we have to learn to live with that and cope.
I think the world, though, has changed in some ways where you're not allowed to fail, even as a kid, right? Remember back in the day when we played sports, even the greatest athletes, they played 3 different sports, right? They were just great athletes. And now, if your kid at age 8 shows any promise at baseball, he is playing baseball, he's playing at school, he's on a travel team, he needs to do this so he can get the opportunity to do that, then he's got to get the opportunity to do that. He better be one of the top 10 players. He won't get to this. He's got to be invited to the invitational because now if he wants to go to college and he's now a junior in high school, right, there's not an opportunity of you're not on the path. And it's a lot to jump off the path and say, no. I mean, that kid generally is quitting something. So I think sometimes it's just the bounce back is hard. And the young people we hire in our company, we have actually found, we're tiny, so we don't have a lot of people, but we have people with great work ethic. But I do think sometimes they feel like if the company doesn't love me, and I'm not going to love them back, I'm getting paid. Now it's more post-pandemic, of course. But they were for $15 an hour, where I asked for a day off because so-and-so's sick or my sister's wedding, and they say, no, we can't spare you. It's not family's not the right word, but a relationship of respect. So if I decide I'm not coming in, I don't need to tell them. I really feel that's the vibe from people. I'm not respected here. I'm here as long as I want to be here. And the minute I don't want to be here, then I can go because I don't respect them. They don't respect me. So sometimes I do think there's this two-way street on it. I've seen managers just be so not kind about days off. I don't know. In our company, we don't have a real policy about it. If you have to, first of all, if you're sick, stay home. But if you have a thing that you need to go to, I used to get so frustrated that I couldn't go to my kids' concerts or this or that. And I'm like, go, just do your work. I know a lot of young people who they'll just say, I can't do whatever. And again, I'm not talking about missing 6 weeks of work when you're 20 years old, but for just opportunities, it's really, I think they feel not respected at certain levels of work. And so they feel like there's 5 other people who want me. Doesn't matter. So I'm out.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Tay. This
you.
was really fun.
Always nice to talk to you.
Yeah, well,
I feel like this is the longest we've had a conversation in so long. I have to book myself on your podcast, literally, to catch up with you.
Yeah.
I like that.
I'm not sure it's me or you, or both of us, but we're both still super busy. I want to just say that in recapping a little bit about what we talked about today, I think it was a great conversation, really, because I think the major lesson for our listeners is about just resilience. You can do it. You can do it. Don't let other people get in your way. And don't be afraid to take risks. Don't be afraid to sometimes not be liked very much. But if you want to be really a superhero leader, if you will, eventually, then these things are very important and they will pay off.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think they really do pay off. Leadership is deconstructible, right? You go in and you see it, and then you can say, yeah, here are 30 plus ways in which leaders show up. It's learnable. You're able to deconstruct it and recreate it.
Soledad, thanks so much again.
My pleasure, always.
Well, that's it for this episode of Superhero Leadership. Again, I want to thank Soledad O'Brien for joining me. And I hope you will join me again next time. Until then, stay focused, stay driven, and keep leading like a superhero with purpose, passion, and integrity. I'm Peter Cuneo. Hey, by the way, if you haven't gotten your free copy of the 32 Essentials for Superhero Leadership, please go to our website at petercuneo.com.
Hi, this is Billy Dim. I'm the CEO of Blentique Wine Company. I want to thank my partners, the Cuneo family, Peter Cuneo, for allowing us to share this remarkable concept with you. It really allows people to create and design their very own private label wines from the comfort of home using this extremely interactive, fun, and experimental blending kit that we've created to bring to your houses, to your friends, to your businesses. And it allows people to really engage wine in a unique way. It gives them the opportunity to experiment with premium single varietal wines, utilizing our unique blending kit that also includes the tools you need to facilitate this really fun and interactive experience. Just imagine inviting a few friends over to experiment with different single varietal wines to then actually have this fun and unique blending experience where you can compete with one another to create your ideal recipes. And once you've conceived of something that each of you really enjoys, you can then upload that favorite recipe online, design your unique label, and order your very own custom labeled product. Today, we are offering a very special discount to the Superhero Leadership listeners. You can visit us through petercuneo.com and find the link, or you can go directly to blentique.com/SHL, and you can enter code SHL for a 10% discount on your blending kit. So we would love for you to give Blentique a try. Visit us online today. Again, blentique.com, and enter code SHL and enjoy your blending kit as a great gift item or one that you get to enjoy and experience wine in a completely unique way. Thanks for your time.